welcome back to Donington for live coverage of the first weekend in the 2021 GT Cup Championship. So good to be back, and everyone is raring to go for day two. We're going to have the sprint race for you very, very soon. But just before that, here's a reminder of what happened yesterday.
Up towards Redgate corner for the first time. Richard Neary in the Mercedes on the left of your screen, but John Seal, almost a bit of contact between the pair, and John Seal tries to squeeze the Mercedes, but it is Richard Neary who sticks his elbows out there. Fourth position at this stage, but everybody is, by the look of things, safely through the first couple of corners in this enormous field that we've got. But problems for John Seal, I'm afraid. Was that a spin coming out? Ah, right, John Seal and Lucky Kira must have made contact coming out of the Old Hall corner. Oh, well, that's Steve Burgess that's off at the wheel of the Radical, his local circuit. But overall, there is very little to choose. Michael Igoe having another little go at John Dillon, flashes the lights. John Dillon tried to turn in, saw that the other car was alongside. Can't do anything as they head up towards Coppice. Can he try and switch back on the exit? Yes, he does. So takes a wider line in, works his way back through, but then the extra power of the Porsche might just tell for Richard Chamberlain. Graham Tilley's big Nissan, can he outbrake the Lamborghini? He's going to go, you know, yeah, up the inside, through goes Graham Tilley. There's a big bid spin, and you're not going to recover from that, I'm afraid to say. Battles on track still raging as well. This is the Porsche that's just bumped a little bit wide by the McLaren there. Michael Igoe is not that far away from him. A little bit slower away was Richard Chamberlain, so he sits there in third place. And what can he do from there? Graham Tilley also attacks Richard Chamberlain. And, right, problems, I'm afraid to say, for the Porsche, because Graham Tilley goes through. And that, I'm afraid to say, is, well, there a loose wheel has fallen off. And that looked like the number 96 Lamborghini. Flicks right, flicks left, he still might have Andy Roby's Marcus Mantis to deal with on the sprint to the line, but Richard Neary has done enough to claim top honours in the first round of the 2021 GT Cup Championship here. A 50-minute race with that pit stop window in the middle of it. Richard Neary and Michael Igoe get going on the front row of the grid and propel themselves up towards Redgate corner. The Mercedes with the Lamborghini to driver's left. Michael Igoe breaks as late as he can, but it's the outside line for him as he heads up towards Redgate corner, so very little that he can do. Richard Chamberlain, I think, on cold tyres, just lost the car there. We were promised a sprinkling of rain earlier on. Oh, that's James Guess, who gets very sideways going through the old hairpin. Bailey has the overlap here, has the inside on Richard Marsh. Through goes the Ferrari. So down the straight they'll come. The Porsche in a straight line. It's got two wheels on the grass. James Hillary is not lifting off at all, keeping it planted. Gets past Stephen Walton, gets up the inside of Carl Cavers as well. Craig Wilkins and the number 67 car in the hands of for this race. Now that's going to be a change, isn't it? Because that's Josh Jackson now that's ahead of Craig Wilkins. So there's been a change for the leader group GTA, and also car number 96. Which is the car that retired earlier on when it lost the wheel, which is going to be Chris Kemp. Off and into the gravel, I'm afraid. That's Charlotte Gilbert that's gone off. Kira looks at the inside, is there room? He bounces over the curbs. Phil Quaife takes the opportunity to drive around the outside of Lucky Kieran, picks up the spot, and now has enough momentum to draw himself alongside Warren Gilbert's car Now, side by side, down through the Craner curves, Darren Turner has managed to pick the pocket of Marcus Clutton's number 66 Mercedes. And for the pairing of Michael Igoe and Phil Keane, it looks as though they are going to draw first blood in terms of wins in the 2021 GT Cup Championship pit stop races. Over the start-finish line comes Phil Keane. It's a win for Michael Igoe and Phil Keane. They scoop up the GT3 group in the process as well.
What a seriously impressive grid. 37 cars this weekend. A phenomenal amount of entries for our opener. Well, I managed to catch up with a few drivers. You'll notice some new faces, but there's also a few familiar ones as well. I'm joined now by 2020's class and overall championship winner, Simon Orange. Hello.
Hi, how are you, Michelle?
I'm doing good. It's nice to see you again this season for hopefully a full season.
Yes, definitely a full season. In fact, we've got 2 entries. Josh and I have got 2 entries in the GTA and the GTH class. And obviously Patrick and Russ are in the GTA class as well. So, we're jumping from one day from a McLaren, next day into the Ginetta. So it should be interesting.
Yeah, brilliant. Now, one thing that is actually very different this year is before you were with Team Hard, now it's all about Team Orange. Hello.
Orange Racing, yeah, we've decided to, we've enjoyed it, so we've decided to set our own team up. So we've bought a great new trailer and all the new kit, so yeah, we're looking forward to it.
Yeah, and it's actually a bit of a collaboration, isn't it, with JMH?
Yeah, JMH are doing some overall management for us because they've got a lot of experience, especially in the McLaren. So they're giving us a helping hand rather than leaving us on our own first season.
Fantastic. So obviously you've already had a couple of outings yesterday. You had a pretty good run, didn't you?
Yeah, bad first race actually. I got a bit left at the start, so only managed the third, but rectified it in the endurance race and got a comfortable win. And I think Josh got a first and a second as well in the GTA. So we're doing all right so far.
So how are you feeling about today's 2 races?
Yeah, I'm in the Ginetta today, so it'll be a little bit hairier than the McLaren, but yeah, looking forward to it. Beautiful day.
Fox Motorsport are back, but with 2 new drivers this season. We'll be chatting to you 2 in just a few moments. But they decided to go out and do a little bit of pre-season testing at Brands Hatch recently. Here's how they got on.
So we're here at Brands Hatch today with Fox Motorsport and the drivers Ian Dugan and James Townsend making their debut in GT Cup for 2021. Obviously we've rebuilt the car at Fox Motorsport over the winter to give them the best chance, and it's our first day out here, just give it a bit of a shakedown and put some winter mileage on the drivers before the season starts. The car's had a full extensive rebuild over the winter from the guys at Fox Motorsport, and today is just to give it a first run, make sure everything's just as it should be. You know, we want to make sure we give the guys the perfect car, the perfect setup. Part of my job is to do a bench line for the car to make sure the car is safe and safe for those guys to go out first, but also to give them a reference lap time for the current track conditions so they can learn from that, rather than trying to chase a time that may not be achievable in the current track conditions.
How did you feel? Yeah, a little first lap nervous on a new tyre, but now it's fine. Yeah, Jamie, box.
Our 2 drivers for this year are James Townsend and Ian Dugan. Ian Dugan steps up to GT Cup, having won the Ginetta GT5 AM Championship with us last year, while James Townsend moves over from Carrera Cup with us last year to join Ian in the car for GT Cup.
This season will be my first time doing 2-driver racing. Today we're looking at testing obviously the car, getting used to the car, and looking at coming into the pits and making sure our timing is correct, making sure we're getting in and out the car correctly. Yeah, it's a big learning curve for us. It's very greasy out there, so it's obviously difficult to make the car stick around the bends. We're trying to set the car up in a way that we both enjoy driving it, so we can have a bit of movement in the car.
Bit of a new experience having come from Carrera Cup before and GT5s with Ginetta, but gradually get my head around it today, yeah. It's a very different experience to drive from the Porsche. I think the chassis in this is a lot stiffer. It feels a lot harder to drive in terms of just the movement of where the car's going, and obviously the engine sort of being to the front to mid rather than the rear is a very different dynamic to what I'm used to. Obviously it's a wet day, which doesn't help in your first time out in the car, but gradually getting my head around it and really enjoying the experience.
So we can see everything the driver's doing from throttle and braking, and we're able to go through it in finite detail in the video post-session and compare my lap in real time against theirs. So when I'm at the apex, we can see how far they are from the apex or what speed differences there are at the apex.
I'm used to working with Jamie and going through debriefing, seeing where we can make up time. Jamie generally does a couple of laps for us so we can chase his time to see where we can get to.
So having his input day to day and just kind of looking at the video, also working through my technique by sitting in the car sometimes with me as well, helps me and has progressed me, leaps and bounds over the last 3 to 4 years. So it's been excellent.
So a really good day for the guys here at Brands. Obviously they've done a lot of laps as they get to know their new car, puts them through their paces in the pit lane, and we move on to testing at Donington Park next week and Snetterton.
There's been something thrown at us all day, but really enjoyed it so far and looking forward to the rest of the season.
Looking forward to enjoyable races and trying to get some trophies.
Well, I'm pleased to say that Ian and James join me now. Guys, welcome to GT Cup.
Hello, thank you very much.
So we saw you doing the pre-season testing. How has the first weekend been for you so far?
So far so good, I think. Ian got a third place in the sprint race yesterday, and then we were fourth in the pit stop race. So good start, I think, really where we wanted to be. This morning with qualifying it's been a bit tougher, but see how we go from here.
Yeah, it's been a big learning curve, but we're really enjoying it, and hopefully we can only improve from here. So yeah.
Now, you're new obviously to the GT Cup, but you're not new as far as driving goes. So just give us a quick rundown again of where you've been until now.
Sure. So did a lot of Ginetta racing prior to this with GT5 and GRDC before that, and then last season I was doing Porsche Carrera Cup, but fancy doing some endurance stuff and joined in this year.
Yeah, I'm similar to James, where I've been doing, started off in GRDC in Ginetta and G40 Cup, and then was in GT5 last year in the AM, managed to win that. So yeah, trying this out and see how we go. So
Yeah, because I suppose the big difference here is the fact that it's multi-class endurance, isn't it? So
that's a massive difference. Yeah. Yesterday was a bit of a very different, to put it that way. So yeah, with a lot of quicker cars, which we're not used to, being on track with different speed cars. So yeah, we're learning. So we'll get there in the end.
yeah, absolutely. Well, listen, have a great second day of racing here at Donington.
Thank you.
Well, great to catch up with some of the drivers there with Michelle Livingsdown in the pit lane, but it's Mark Werrell that's chatting to you now up in the commentary box on what is an overcast day here at Donington Park. We are on the national circuit. There is the possibility of rain over the course of this afternoon. Now, that was the same forecast as yesterday. It was bitterly cold, so trying to get temperature into tyres and brakes will be critical when the cars head on their final formation lap. But again, the rain just stayed off yesterday. We've had a few little, well, I say rain, almost sleety showers over the course of this morning, but the track and the tarmac has largely stayed dry, and hopefully the grey skies above will disappear and the sun might just peek its way through, because this is the third race now of the season for the GT Cup Championship. We had a sprint race and a pit stop race yesterday. We have exactly the same today. The sprint race, as we've heard, coming up very, very shortly. And then later on this afternoon, once more, we'll be back live with our pit stop race. Intriguingly, yesterday, we have 6 different groups. We don't call them classes, we call them groups in the GT Cup Championship. I'll guide you through the way that the group works in a while. So 6 different groups, 2 races. We had 12 different group winners. So out of a possible 12, we had 12 different group winners. No one single car or driver pairing secured victory in both sprint and endurance races. It goes to show that the way the technical regulations are written and the balance of performance so as to equalise the performance of all of the cars in their respective groups certainly works. Pit lane's looking rather busy. The support race that has just been out prior to our GT Cup Championship race has just had the checkered flag fall, so that's why there's a range of cars working their way down the pit lane here at Donington Park, and then once the circuit has been cleared of the race prior, we'll get things underway for what is highly likely to be an entertaining race. A record number of 38 cars were entered for this weekend, which is the most we've ever had at a Donington Park race meeting. It's not the overall record, but the most we've ever had at Donington Park, and certainly some star cars as well. That car there took an overall race win yesterday. The Irishman Michael Igo sharing the car with British GT star Phil Keane. Those two are partnered for this weekend in GT Cup. We'll see them out at Brands Hatch on the 1st of May there as well. As they are doing a part season with us. They're not at the moment committed to doing every round, but chatting to Michael Igo yesterday, certainly doing Donington Park because he's here. He's certainly doing the next round at Brands Hatch, and he's probably likely to do his home circuit as well, which is Alton Park up in Cheshire. Whether they drop in for more rounds, we'll have to wait and see, but they're large focus this year is on the British GT Championship, for which the pair will be competing in that very car, the Lamborghini Huracan GT3. So with so many different cars, so many different manufacturers on the grid, and lots of new cars coming in as well. That's a new car for this year. That is James Guess. He was racing with us last year in a Ginetta in the GTH category. GTH caters for GT4 homologated cars. There's a quick wave from James. And what a teammate he's managed to find for this year, because he has got former class winner at Le Mans, Darren Turner, that's partnered with him. The two are involved in business together, base simulators. And James has managed to have a conversation with Darren, who has been a Works Aston Martin driver for so many years. And the two of them are teamed up and committed for the season as well. The car at the very front of your screen as well is McLaren. So that's the father and son pairing. We've got a couple of father and son pairings on the grid, but that is father Stuart Proctor partnered up with son Lewis Proctor at the wheel of a McLaren GT3. Hopefully we might be able to hear more about that throughout the course of this afternoon. And that's another new car as well. It's not a new driver, but that is Lucky Kira. We saw him competing last year in a Group GTC Ferrari, so a Ferrari that ran to European Challenge specifications. So that's Group GTC caters for sort of late model challenge and cup cars. So the likes of Ferraris and Lamborghini Super Trofeo cars all sit in Group GTC but are balanced up. He's moved through to a GT3 Lamborghini for this year. So Lucky Kira switching from a Ferrari. I think we saw him in a Porsche at one round as well, but moving over to a Lamborghini, of which there are several this year. Many new cars, many new drivers, plenty of new faces, and some new teams coming in as well. Great to see some new teams joining us with the likes of Orange Racing, as we heard from Simon Orange, but that's not the only new team that we've got in. We've got Greystone GT, who are bringing 3 cars to this particular weekend with total novice drivers, the likes of Richard Mason and Ian Campbell, and in their third car they have Mark Hopton, all partnered up with very experienced pros. In the case of Richard Mason, he's with John Lancaster, a former European Le Mans Series champion. In the case of Ian Campbell, he's partnered with another former European Le Mans Series champion, Ollie Webb, and in the case of Mark Hopton, he's partnered with a former Formula One BAR test driver and A1GP champion, Adam Carroll. So there's some real strength in depth, and nice to see that we've got a mixture of amateur drivers and professional drivers, and for this year a new categorisation which is pro sporting drivers. And again, over the course of not so much this race but over the course of later on, I'll guide you through the way that works. Looks rather ominous, doesn't it? Ominous in the distance. Grey skies coming in. I do fear that in what is a 25-minute sprint race, we might just get away with it, but I don't think we're going to get away with it for the afternoon. And such is the ambient temperature out there, then it may not be rain that falls, it could be rather sleety, and if that's the case, it's going to create some very difficult conditions for the drivers. So the cars are as good as ready to go. They'll be nudging their way out into the pit lane very shortly. Let me just guide you through the way that the groups work in this one. So Group GT3 is for homologated GT cars that run to GT3 specification, so the likes of those that we would see in the British GT Championship in the GT3 category and in the World GT Challenge Europe. A GT3, a global formula in reality. Group GTO is for open specification cars, so low volume manufacturers, cars that might run to GT2 and GTE specifications, and also modified challenge cars, so the likes of the Radical RXC is in that for this weekend. Ben Dimmock and Steve Burgess, who share that car, we'll talk more about them as they head onto the grid, and Richard Chamberlain at the wheel of his Porsche 935, who's been a regular in the GT Cup for many a year indeed. Group GTC is for later model challenge and cup cars, balanced by performance. So if it were a Ferrari 488 European Challenge spec car or a Lamborghini Super Trofeo car, they would sit in Group GTC, but because they come from different one-make championships, they would have their performance balanced by a mixture of either power output or changing the weight and having to put ballast in the cars to equalise their performances. Group GTB, again, is for challenge cars, but that's for sort of earlier specification cars that would sit in that. So if we saw the likes of Ferrari 458s and certainly 430s and some of the earlier Porsches, they would sit in Group GTB. Group GTH, I mentioned, is a new categorisation that came in a couple of seasons ago. It's been hugely popular. It's the biggest class here this weekend. That is for GT4 homologated cars, so again the likes of those that you would see in the British GT Championship and the European GT4 Championship. And then Group GTA is for lower specification challenge cars and one make cars, so largely for this weekend that is made up by Ginetta G55 Super Cup cars, so in other words cars that run to the Ginetta Super Cup specification, i.e. if you ever watch the British Touring Car Championship, they are a support race to that. So that sort of gives you an indication as to the various groups. As for the categorisations of the drivers, well, they are categorised 3 different ways as the cars head out onto the out lap in reality to line themselves up on the grid, and then we can maybe get Michelle to catch up with a few drivers down there. But the driver categorisations, we've got pro drivers. Well, if you are a pro driver, you are not eligible to take part in any qualifying over the weekend, and you are not eligible to take part in the sprint races. Now, this is a sprint race that's coming up, so pro drivers are not allowed in this one. A new categorisation for this year is pro sporting drivers. Now, if you are identified as a pro sporting driver, that means that you are not necessarily a professional driver, but you do spend a chunk of time coaching and have a lot of experience. That's deemed as a categorisation that you drop into by the organisers. There are fewer pro sporting drivers on the grid. Those pro sporting drivers can only take part in one of the 2 sprint races over the course of the weekend and one of the 2 qualification sessions over the weekend. They also, come the endurance race later on, have to go second in the car, a bit like the pro drivers do. So those are pro sporting drivers. So if they competed in this sprint race yesterday, they can't compete in it today. And if they didn't compete in it yesterday, they could if they wanted to today. It depends on what the teams and the drivers decide. And those drivers that are categorised as neither pro nor pro sporting, I'm not going to call them amateur drivers, but maybe in other categories they're categorised as that. They can choose whichever races they want to drop into, so it's up to the teams to decide where cars are shared as to which driver does which races and who is going to share the driving duties over the course of the weekend. So that gives you a really good rundown of the way the regulations are written at a very high level. We'll guide you through come the pit stop race later on as to how the pit windows are eligible and open up in GT Cup Championship, because there's changes to the regulations for those this year. But as the cars stream their way out onto the circuit, it's wonderful to see. It's a fantastic array of cars, and all these new cars coming in with the likes of Porsche and McLaren and Aston Martin, Ginetta, Lamborghini, Mercedes, Marcos, Ferrari. We even had a Lotus yesterday with us, which sadly is an absentee for today. Such a shame that Peter Jackson had problems in the free practice session yesterday where the car lost its brakes, and they tried to fix it for qualifying but weren't able to. And as a result of the problems, they have withdrawn that car. So such a shame for Peter Jackson with the Lotus Elise that he didn't do many laps this weekend, but hopefully he will be back later on. So the car's just working their way around. That's the car that's going to line up on pole position. It is Sam Neary that's going to start that car. Now, Sam is classified as a sporting pro driver or pro sporting driver, which means that he did not compete in yesterday's sprint race. Dad did. And Richard Neary brought it home to the race win. So what can Sam do? He's a pretty young driver as well, is Sam Neary. He's only 18 years of age still. We saw him racing in British GT last year. We've seen him in GT Cup in the past as well. He raced at Spa just aged 16 years of age, and I think he's one of the youngest ever drivers to race a GT3 car. He was just 17 years of age when he started racing in GT3 category. So he is bringing the car up onto pole position. I can see his father Richard is there alongside, wearing the Dayglow jacket and just working his way around to open the door and have a word with Sam Neary. And I'm hoping now that the cars are beginning to line up on the grid that maybe Michelle Livings might be able to catch up with a few of the drivers down there on the grid.
Here, Mark, I'm on the grid. Thanks for the weather report, by the way. The sun was shining, but that black cloud is fast approaching. We'll see how it goes for this 25-minute run. You just mentioned Sam Neary. Here he is, lined up on pole position in his fabulous-looking car with Dad Richard standing by. Now, Richard, I think, had a really good sprint run yesterday, taking the win, so we'll see if Sam can do the same job in today's race. Now, if you just follow me back here, let's have a look on the second row of the grid. Car number 18, if you have a look at this one here, that is Michael Igoe driving. He has actually partnered up with pro driver Phil Keane. But as you mentioned rightly, Mark, the pro drivers aren't allowed to race in the sprint, so we won't be seeing him in this race, but you will see him a little bit later on. If we come back a little bit further, I'm going to see how far I can get before I'm thrown off. We have got car number, let me see where we're going here. Yeah, 36 here, the McLaren. If you have a look at this, these are the Proctors. This is another father and son, actually. We were talking about the Nearys earlier. We have got Stuart Proctor, who's going to be racing. Son Lewis will be joining him a bit later on. So it'll be Stuart racing in this. Now, what's interesting is both of them have been racing in GT Cup before, but interestingly, they were racing GT4s. This is the first time a GT3 has appeared in the championship, McLaren GT3 in the championship. I'm sure, Mark, you'll be able to explain a little bit more about that. But this is their car, and they're, as I say, on the third row of the grid. You can see the grid just goes on and on and on. I'm not even going to attempt to go further back. But I think what I will do is hand you back over to Mark, because Mark, you'll be able to give us a few more details about the grid in full, because there's a lot to get through before this race commences. Mark.
Thanks a lot, Michelle. Yeah, you can see just how far back that grid stretches. 37 cars that we are left with for today. Just the one absentee, as I suggested, and with those mixture of GT3 and GTO, GTC, GTB, GTA and GTH cars, what a wonderful variety, as ever, the GT Cup Championship is able to provide. So the key on this formation lap that will be coming up very shortly in the cold ambient conditions will be to build brake temperature and build tyre temperature, the Control Pirelli slick tyres that they all run. So let's just guide you through the grid as they are about to head off on their formation lap and pick up on some of the starting drivers as well that we will see for this particular race that's coming up, the sprint race. Remember, the pros can't get involved. So the front row of the grid, that is where we see the Team ABBA Racing Mercedes AMG GT3 started by Sam Neary, and alongside it Simon Green Motorsport and the Lamborghini of Lucky Kira. Row number 2 of the grid, it's a WPI Motorsport, which is going to be Michael Igoe in the Lamborghini, and alongside is the Triple M Motorsport TechServe supported Nissan in the hands of Graham Tilley. Row 3 of the grid is CTR Developments and Richard Chamberlain in the Porsche, and for company he's got Balf Motorsport and Stuart Proctor with that McLaren 750S GT3, the first time we've had a GT3 McLaren in the series, as off they head on their formation lap. Row 4 of the grid is Raw Motorsport, Ben Dimmock in the Radical, and alongside the Scott Sport car of John Dillon, which is a Lamborghini. And row 5 of the grid, JMH Automotive, which is John Seal at the wheel of his Lamborghini, alongside the Top Cats Racing Lamborghini, which is the leading car in Group GTC. That is Warren Gilbert for this race. Other cars that lead their particular categories and are on pole position, well, on the 7th row of the grid, the Valuga Motorsport Porsche, Nick Phelps is a leading car in Group GTB. On the 8th row of the grid, the leading car in Group GTA is the Orange Racing powered by JMH, Ginetta of Simon Orange. And down on the 10th row of the grid, Deranged Motorsport, that is where we see the leading car in Group GTH for the GT4 specification cars. That's that is the number 52 Aston Martin in the hands of Matthew Lewis for this race. So that picks out some of our group pole sitters in reality, as the cars head off on their final formation lap for what is a 25-minute sprint race. So the drivers behind the wheel of the car will remain behind the wheel of the car for this race. We get the driver changes and the pit stops for our endurance race or pit stop race later on over the course of the day. Yesterday's race, we saw in the sprint race Richard Neary bring the Mercedes home to a win. Can we see his son, Sam Neary, bring it home to victory in this race? Sounds easy, doesn't it? So qualifying saw Sam Neary qualify 1.6 seconds quicker than Michael Igoe could manage at the wheel of the Lamborghini Huracan, but a lot of it will come down to the setup of the car, making sure that you don't overwork the car and maybe overwork the tyres, but traffic management on this Donington Park National Circuit is going to be absolutely key in this one, and making sure you pick the right moment and not the wrong moment to work your way past the slower traffic, because overtaking for the faster cars is going to be a fundamental part of this 25-minute race. And they will be lapping some of the slower cars toward the tail end of the field, maybe 2, possibly even 3 times over the course of the 25 minutes. Lights are off on the safety car. It is going to be Sam Neary in the Mercedes on pole position, the almost black car of Lucky Kira in the Lamborghini that sits alongside Michael Igoe and Graham Tilley in the Nissan on row number 2. Lights go out, they head up towards Redgate Corner for the first time. Sam Neary already just making sure that he protects that inside line. Lucky Kira trying to get around the outside though at the wheel of his GT3 Lamborghini as they head through Redgate Corner. Needs to be careful not to run too wide and open up the door for Michael Igoe to squeeze through, but I think Michael Igoe has made it as Lucky Kira was looking for the lead of the race. He just ran that little bit wide, and all of a sudden it's a different Lamborghini now that's in the mirrors of Sam Neary as he threads his way through the old hairpin for the first time. And certainly you can see just how busy that mid-pack is as all the cars in Group GTA and GTH in particular all thunder their way through the old hairpin. There is the Ginetta we were talking to Ian Duggan and James Townsend earlier on. There is their Ginetta, the pink and blue one. Nice and easy to spot the livery on that car, but I think largely the first lap has gone to plan for everybody in this one as they thread their way out of McLean's Corner and up towards Coppice for the first time. The leaders are already heading in towards the Roberts chicane. Mercedes leads Sam Neary, Lamborghini second Michael Igoe, Lamborghini third, which is Lucky Kira, and Graham Tilley and the Nissan there in 4th place. You can see all of them trying to straighten up the Roberts chicane as much as they possibly can by using as much of the curb as they can. And further down through the order, the battles down towards the midfield have been so intense all weekend. Charlotte Gilbert was a little bit slow, I think, through the Robert chicane there, so one car to driver's right, one car to driver's left, but no real problems for anybody in that mid-pack, despite the fact they are very, very tightly bunched, understandably, in the early stages. So lap number 2, cars accelerating their way out of the old hairpin. Sam Neary looking to try and push on, still just 18 years of age. Behind him is Michael Igoe looking to see what he can do. Michael's only been racing for 2 or 3 years, the 33-year-old from Knutsford, so on the doorstep of Alton Park almost. Finished runner-up in the GT Cup GTC category back in 2018, did Michael Igoe. And has really come on so strongly over the course of the last few years. Has worked with various pro drivers since he first started racing, but it is Phil Keane, factory Lamborghini driver, that he's working with in 2021. And Sam Neary, the first flying lap, chalked into the book, a 1:05.2. So that is not a bad opening lap. We were down in the 1:04s yesterday, so we should be able to squeeze probably another half a second maybe out of the times that are being posted. That's Warren Gilbert. That's a brand new car for Top Cats Racing. Jensen Lunn owns the car. That's who Warren Gilbert shares it with over the course of the weekend. Not the first time that we've seen Top Cats running a Lamborghini. They ran a Gallardo for Neil Huggins a few seasons ago, and he's being chased by the car that sits behind, and that is going to be the Radical RXC, the 2.7, 2.8 litre normally aspirated car in the hands of long-time Radical racer and former mini racer Ben Dimmock, who is behind the wheel for this one. Back towards the fight for 5th, 6th and 7th, Richard Chamberlain, who leads Group GTO for the open spec cars. His orange Porsche you could just see there in the background. Front 3 starting to pull away. Now this is James Simons under pressure from Paul Bailey, so this is an intergroup battle. It's a Group GTC Lamborghini holding up a Group GTO Ferrari, which is a little bit outpowered this weekend. Originally it was due to have been a different car that Paul Bailey was racing. He has plenty of racing cars at his disposal, a car collector as well, a man who lives in Hamilton on the side of Rutland Water. The problems with the Brabham means that they switched to the Ferrari, and they've decided to run the Ferrari in Group GTO this weekend, knowing full well that they are down on power, but they are accumulating some points in Group GTO, so that when they get their Brabham back for Brands Hatch, they can add to the tally rather than end up non-scoring in this one. Further back, that is a little look up the inside from the Aston Martin, equally as much the number 1 McLaren, which is Josh Jackson in this race. Had a quick look up the inside of Craig Wilkins, who celebrated his 50th birthday, I think, yesterday, Craig, at the wheel of that red and Dayglow Ginetta. But it's a huge train of cars, isn't it? This is 12th, 13th, 14th, 15th, 16th and 17th that are all together. Nick Phelps under pressure from reigning champion Simon Orange in the orange Ginetta. Just ahead of them is going to be the number 35 Porsche, the black car of Richard Marsh, but Richard Marsh wants to try and attack the Ferrari of Paul Bailey ahead. Paul Bailey is bottled up behind James Simons, the former F3 Cup racer. And you can see just the battles that are going on now. Has Simon Orange got the overlap there on Nick Phelps? Not sure he's going to make it through, because Group GTB Porsche should have a bit more grunt than the orange Ginetta as they head down the straight. And Simon Orange also needs to be careful. Oh, problems, I'm afraid, and that is Matthew Lewis. The Deranged Motorsport Aston Martin is out of the race, so problems for him within the first 5 minutes of the race, which is such a shame, but he's parked the car up sensibly out of harm's way, so that will just be covered by a localised yellow for a lap or two, and then we can get full racing done again once more. There's no requirement at all, I wouldn't have thought, for a safety car, such as the sensible parking of that car following the problem by the driver. Down through the Craner curves, James Simon running in 12th place. Oh, and that's Ben Dimmock all over the grass at the wheel of the Radical. That surely might have caused a bit of damage to the front splitter. It has certainly covered the radiator grills and intakes with grass. Now, that is going to be a cause for concern. He's surely going to have to come into the pit lane and get the mechanics to sweep the grass out of the radiator ducts of that car, because he'll be watching the engine temperatures just climb and climb and climb, I would have thought, on that car, and that is going to do him no good at all in the race if the engine temperatures climb. He'll have to come in and get all the grass swept out of the radiator ducts. Out of Coppice Corner, we've still got the car of Simon Orange doing great battle with what is Craig Wilkins, jinking one way, jinking the other. That's for the lead of Group GTA, actually. So number 67, Orange Ginetta, leads Group GTA, but is bottled up behind the Porsche of Nick Phelps and wants to crack on. Nick Phelps is doing battle with Richard Marsh at the wheel of his Porsche, which is for the lead of Group GTB. And into the pit lane, I'm afraid to say, comes Michael Igoe with a problem. The Lamborghini that had been going so well has had an issue and has had to dive into the pits early, and that is going to drop that car well and truly out of contention now. Got to say, hugely impressed with James Simons, having a great little battle with the Ferrari that sits behind. Sam Neary's just getting quicker and quicker and quicker, down into the 1-minute 4s now, 1 minute 4.789. But for James Simon, new Lamborghini for him this year. They had a rather recalcitrant Lotus for a couple of years, which was just a little bit highly strung. When it went well, but the problem was it had a few issues, and it's a new car. James Simons was saying to me yesterday, he'd done very little testing in this Lamborghini, but look at what he's doing. He's holding up Paul Bailey's Porsche, and despite the best efforts, Paul just can't find his way through. And there is a very sad sight, the Lamborghini in the pit lane, and not unsurprisingly, the Radical comes in. Yeah, so the mechanics sweeping out the grass from the radiator ducts. Battles on circuit still continue. Lead battle of Group GTA absolutely together. The Orange Ginetta under pressure from the man from the West Midlands, Craig Wilkins. The two Porsches for the lead of Group GTB just ahead are absolutely side by side as Nick Phelps draws himself alongside Richard Marsh. And finally, looks as though we might have a change in position now. That's the number 61 car of John Dillon, who's there in 7th position, and Paul Bailey has now dropped behind him. So there goes the second of the two orange racing cars, the number 1 McLaren, the new car for them. Josh Jackson behind the wheel of that one. So up towards McLean's corner. James Simons, Paul Bailey, Richard Marsh, Nick Phelps not too far away as well. Remember, the two Porsches fighting over the lead of Group GTB. The two Ginettas behind fighting over the lead of Group GTA. Who's leading Group GTH at the moment? Because that is the most heavily disputed class. It's the Aston Martin just behind the two Ginettas, which is James Guest. So, yeah, there's the two Group GTB leading Porsches, the two Group GTA leading Ginettas, and that number 82 Aston Martin leads Group GTH, which is for the GT4 homologated cars. So, great class battles going on, or group battles going on, and other cars mixing themselves amongst them as well. Up towards the breaking out of Redgate corner, James Guest has now separated the two Ginettas for the lead of Group GTA. He's managed to get his car in amongst them. So just guide you through the group leaders at this stage. Leading Group GT3 is the overall race leading car. That car there, the number 88 Mercedes in the hands of Sam Neary. Leading Group GTO is the number 5 orange Porsche of Richard Chamberlain. Leading Group GTC is the number 9 Lamborghini in the hands of Warren Gilbert. Group GTB we know is the Porsche in the hands of Richard Marsh, the black Porsche. Leading Group GTA is still going to be Simon Orange, the number 67 Ginetta, with a bit more breathing space now between himself and Craig Wilkins. Leading Group GTH, that we just mentioned, was the number 82 Aston Martin of James Guest. And off, I'm afraid to say, with a rotation, has gone James Hillier, who is sharing that Porsche with David Franklin, and that car is beached on the very edge of the gravel, I'm afraid to say, up at McLean's corner. The driving wheel's in the gravel, sadly, and the front of the car parked almost on the edge of the rumble strip. So we either need some hugely brave marshals to get out there under localised yellows and try and give it a shove and get it out of harm's way, or if not, that could possibly bring about the intervention of a safety car. Well, we're going for the former to start with, and two marshals pushing on the back of a Porsche beached in the gravel is not enough person power, I'm afraid to say, so that will require that car to be snatched out of the way, and that is highly likely to mean, because of its position, that will be done potentially under a full safety car. We'll have to wait and see. No decision from race control with regards to that as yet. Down through the Craner curves and the old hairpin goes our race leader, scything his way through and past the traffic. Sam Neary's going to have a busy few laps coming up here as he tries to work his way through the traffic. James Simons at the wheel of the number 41 Lamborghini has still got this great big queue of cars behind him, which now at the tail end of that queue includes the race leader. Safety car, however, is coming out by the look of things. So yeah, race control have quite understandably made the, as ever, the right decision. They never make anything other than the wrong decision, but with that car where it is, little choice but to go full course caution, because the marshals did what they could to try and shove the car out of the harm's way, but with all of the weight, of course, over the back wheels of the Porsche, it was just a bit too beached. deep into the gravel to just on pure person power getting out of the way. So safety car comes out, it's on standby, it's going to have to try and pick up the race leader, which it might try and do. Is Sam Neary going to back off? Yes, he is. Sensible driving by Sam. He might be only 18 years of age, but has already got a huge chunk of experience. He would have been told over the radio about the safety car. He'd have seen it's displayed with the SC boards and the yellow flags at the individual marshals posts around the circuit, so he would have been aware that it was coming out. He'll have been aware that he was in the lead of the race, and as soon as he saw the safety car poke its nose out of pit lane exit, the sensible thing is, you know it needs to pick you up, you back off, let the safety car come up in front of you, and then it means that there is very little shuffling that needs to be done of the pack, because the safety car has got the correct car behind it ready for the restart of the race, which hopefully should just be a couple of laps behind the safety car, because there's no damage to the errant 24/7 Motorsport Porsche 911 GT3 Cup car of James Hillier. It's just beached in the gravel, so either a quick shove with a few more people or a drag out of the gravel by one of the teleloaders here that we have situated at Donington Park should see that car out of harm's way. But the first thing they'll probably do is just wait for the pack to go through before they can then start to get on with the recovery of it. So yeah, there is James Hillier still behind the wheel. Our marshals just giving him the instruction as to how they're going to get the car out of harm's way. I would say connect it at the front probably, drag it out the gravel, disconnect it immediately, and let James either drive the car to a safe position or back to the pit lane. So there goes the circuit vehicle, the telehandler. Yep, they are going to snatch it from the front, get the rear wheels back on the tarmac. Hopefully the car will fire up. The difficulty can sometimes be with a car that's gone in the gravel. Whilst it's undamaged, the gravel really does get everywhere, and if it sits underneath a belt, particularly something like a timing belt, then that can cause engine damage as soon as you get the engine fired up again, because of course it slips a tooth on the cam or something like that, and all of a sudden what was an undamaged car becomes a damaged car. Let's hope that that's not the case, but the one thing the team will want to do is ensure that all of that gravel is out of the car before it either continues in the race if it's able to, or certainly all the gravel is out of the car before the pit stop race later on. So there we go. So James Hillier has indeed, as I thought, fired it up into life. He's going to stay out of the racing line and continue along the circuit, try and shake some of the gravel out of the bottom of the car. And as long as he does that off the racing line, he'll hopefully still be friends with people. If he does it on the racing line, that then means that next time the cars are at racing speed, they break on the gravel, which acts like marbles in reality and can soon cause further problems. So James is doing the sensible thing again. He's again a very experienced driver, is James Hillier. Still a young man in reality. James is a driver who we've seen racing in things like the Mini Cooper Challenge in the past, and I think also James, we saw him out in Fiesta Juniors, was where he first sort of appeared, which is a category for drivers that are under 16 years of age. We have a few categories like that, like Ginetta Juniors and Fiesta Juniors and Junior Saloon Car Championship. But yeah, it's one of the junior categories that James came through, I believe. So lights are still on the safety car for the moment. It will extinguish those lights when it heads down towards the Roberts chicane. A brief call into the pits for James Hillier following his gravelly moment, and hopefully that will be just for a check over of the car by the mechanics. We can see also the Radical in the hands of Ben Dimmock that had its grassy moment and needed to call in for the radiator ducts to be cleared out, has also been dealt with. So I think we are pretty much good to go. In fact, we are good to go because the lights are now out on the safety car. Sam Neary doing the last bit of weaving from side to side. The good thing is he leads the race, and the car in second place is several cars behind, because it's some of the lapped cars that are in between himself and the second place car of Lucky Kira. So Sam Neary can really get his foot down and open up that advantage once more, because there's what, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 cars I think between Sam Neary and the car that's in second position, Lucky Kira. So here comes Lucky now, the black Lamborghini, looking to try and dive up the inside of the number 80 McLaren. That's Graham Tilley, the big Nissan, Godzilla as it's known, sitting there in third position. And off and through the gravel trap, that's James Townsend, who we spoke to before the race. Michelle caught up with James and Ian Duggan, but just running that little bit wide there at the wheel of the Fox Motorsport Ginetta. Good to see Fox Motorsport back in the GT Cup Championship this year. Threading his way through the traffic goes the orange Porsche of Richard Chamberlain in the background. We're looking at the fight that's going on between Carl Cavers, who is fighting away with the number 26 car, which is Tom Rawlings for this race. So 2 new drivers to the GT Cup Championship. Morgan Tilbrook's orange Mercedes not that far behind. and then the number 17 Ginetta that sits just off the tail end of that, which is going to be Patrick Collins at the wheel of the third Orange Racing powered by JMH car that we've got in the field. So this is a good little fight. This is for 20th, 21st, 22nd position, I think, at this stage. Graham Tilley's going to have a busy lap at the wheel of third place Nissan. GT3 cars occupying the first, second and third places in this race, and the fight is on as Lucky Kira come under pressure from Graham Tilley as they're trying to work their way through the traffic. Charlotte Gilbert just saw the Lamborghini coming and therefore didn't turn in, and now Charlotte Gilbert does not see Graham Tilley as a car slows ahead of her, so understandably jinked out of the way, and Graham Tilley had to be very quick to react to that. And I think the car that was slowing down is the number 17 Ginetta of Patrick Collins. I did see that car puffing out a little bit of smoke in a straight line from the front right corner, 2 laps on the trot, so maybe that's the mechanical woe. And off, I'm afraid, is Make It Happen Racing. That's Chris Hart that's had a rotation. That is at the top of Hollywood, so the problems occurred coming out of Redgate Corner. Didn't quite gather it up by the time he got to Hollywood and spun harmlessly onto the grass. Now this is the car that leads Group GTO, the open specification cars. Big lick of flame out the back of the Porsche 935 of Richard Chamberlain. He's running in 4th place overall, but with a huge amount of daylight between himself and the cars behind. Sam Neary, it's all very much going to plan for Sam Neary. In the background there's cars off in the gravel briefly up at Coppice Corner, but Sam Neary's got a very, very large gap between himself and this car here, Lucky Kira, who comes over the start-finish line. But no matter where you look, it is busy, and James Simons, who has held up Paul Bailey's Ferrari for the whole race so far, is still doing a cracking job. They work their way through the next little bit of traffic, which is the number 22 Richard Mason Greystone GT McLaren, and you can see over the start-finish line that you get past one back marker and all it means is there's more back markers to deal with, and we've still got the lead battle going on for Group GTB. The 2 Porsches pretty much inseparable, aren't they? Richard Marsh still under pressure from Nick Phelps, we saw there as they went through Redgate Corner. So we're very, very busy. I did say traffic management would be key in this one, but on a very busy Donington Park National Circuit, there's no let-up in the pressure, is there, at all? Through the old hairpin has gone some of the cars that are battling. Paul Bailey is at the moment separating the 2 Group GTB Porsches, so he's dropped down through the order there, the Ferrari. He's got Richard Marsh ahead of him, and that, I'm afraid to say, is one of the 2 Marcos Mantis cars. That's Charlotte Gilbert, who had problems yesterday in the pit stop race. She had an off and into the gravel, unfortunately, but it looks like it's a mechanical issue this time round for poor old Charlotte Gilbert, who is in for her 2nd full season of GT Cup. Great to see her staying with the Top Cats team. Of course, her husband Warren Gilbert also racing in this very race as well, and at the moment leading Group GTC Warren Gilbert, running in 7th place overall at the wheel of the number 9 Lamborghini. Side by side, Ian Campbell trying to sneak up the inside of Mike Price, former Porsche racer, and didn't quite make it through. So it's still just the Balfe Motorsport McLaren that is just ahead of one of the 3 Greystone GT McLarens that we've got. John Seal at the wheel of number 55 Lamborghini threading his way through the traffic. He sits 5th in the race overall, and at the moment that's another battle as well. John Seal at the wheel of that Lamborghini was right behind the orange Porsche, and that's for the lead of Group GTO. So this is another battle for the lead of the group. I think nearly every group we have a battle in, other than perhaps the lead of Group GT3. So this is the lead of Group GTO. First is the Porsche, second is the Lamborghini, and what great work is done by the technical team at Butte Motorsport who run the GT Cup, because to have 2 entirely different cars, a car that harks back to the 1970s under pressure from what is arguably a GT3 specification Lamborghini but has been chosen to run in Group GTO this weekend, and they've balanced the performance of those 2 entirely different cars so that they are pretty much equal around the lap. Lead battle for Group GTA has got itself together again once more. James Guest at the wheel of the Aston Martin, a little bit slower coming out of the Roberts chicane, so that has allowed the orange Ginetta of Simon Orange to come back under pressure from Craig Wilkins. They are side by side, 3 wide by the look of things. Chris Murphy needs to stay out of harm's way at the wheel of the older Aston Martin. Through goes Simon Orange, through goes James Guest, through goes Craig Wilkins, and those 2 Ginettas that are now sandwiching the Aston Martin are fighting for the lead of Group GTA, but James Guest equally as much doesn't want to slow up and let one or other through, because he is leading Group GTH for the GT4 homologated cars. Fantastic stuff. Through Schwantz Curve, up towards the braking area for McLean's corner. Now, this is 13th, 14th and 15th positions. You can tell the different groups that the cars sit in if you just look at the corners of the sun strip. So it's the orange, the Group GTA cars have the orange corner elements to the sun strips. The Group GTH car, which sits in the middle, the Aston Martin, you can see its little red outlines towards the top corners of the sun visors, and that's the way that you can tell all of the groups that the cars run in by the different coloration on the sun strip. Now there is a 5-second stop-go penalty for car number 50. That will be for Carl Cavers, partnered with Porsche Carrera Cup GB driver Lewis Plato for this weekend. Lewis is classified as a pro and therefore can't take part in this sprint race, so 5-second penalty for him for track limits. As our race leader, he's going to have a busy element of the race again now, squeezing his way past the number 96 Lamborghini. That's Chris Kemp that is now dispatched a further lap down by Sam Neary. Sam Neary picks off Chris Hart. James Townsend at the wheel of the blue and pink Fox Motorsport Ginetta will be the next to pick off, which he dives at the inside off, heading in towards the old hairpin. Chris Murphy at the wheel of the number 72 Lamborghini. Former champion is Chris from a couple of seasons ago when he was partnered with Adam Hatfield. They claimed the overall GT Cup Championship. Chris has now been picked off, so Sam Neary is safely onto his 19th lap of the race with 2 3/4 minutes to go. He also has the fastest lap of the race as well in this one. And there is an additional championship point for the fastest lap in the race. So that at the moment is going the way of Sam Neary. That fastest lap additional point is in each of the groups as well, by the way, just to clarify. So Sam Neary passed Craig Wilkins. So that is everybody up to and including 15th position now that has been placed a lap down. In a straight line, the GT3 car has so much more power than the GT4s. So he sides his way past James Guess, who's running in 14th position. And Sam Neary is enjoying a very, very sizable lead indeed between himself and Lucky Kira. Something like 20 seconds now separates the two of them. Into the pit lane. Right, so that was Michael Igo again. So now that's sensible, I've got to say, by the team. They clearly had an issue with the Lamborghini which spelt a retirement for it. They have clearly worked on whatever the problem is and have sent that car back out again just for a single lap or so to check the problem is sorted. And if it is, then at least they know that the car is ready for the endurance race, the pit stop race that's coming up later on. So that was almost sort of an out lap, or that became an in lap, or a single lap or two, just to check the problem was sorted, because of course after this race the next time the cars will hit the circuit will be for the start of their pit stop race later on. So sensible stuff there. Sam Neary working his way through the traffic as the sleet starts to fall. So this could be an interesting final lap or so. Over the start-finish line came Sam Neary. The last lap was a 1:09. There's about 1 minute and 9 seconds remaining as he came over the start-finish line, but in deteriorating conditions. I suspect he's now on his last lap, as parking up the Lamborghini comes John Seal, that was, who was running second in Group GTO. So Sam Neary down through the old hairpin, comfortably leading the race by 20 seconds. This car claimed victory in the hands of his father Richard Neary yesterday, and as Sam flicks his way past James Simons, it's in fact snow that's now starting to fall rather than sleet looking out of the commentary box window. Sun is still shining though. How bizarre is that, isn't it? Snow is falling, sunshine is out, as out of Coppice Corner for what I think will be the final time is Sam Neary. And off has gone James Townsend. Should be able to recover that because at least one of the driving wheels is on the grass, so should be able to continue. But for Sam Neary, one more car to deal with, should he wish, will be David Holloway's car on the exit of Robert Chicane, and he's going to head over the start-finish line with seconds to go. Does the checker flag come out? Yes, it does. Bang on 0 seconds left as he takes the checker flag. It is another win for the ABBA Racing Mercedes in the hands of Sam Neary. So a great run for them in that race, a pretty untroubled run really for Sam Neary in the end. It's going to be a long gap back before we see the second place car head over the start finish line. You can see in the background, yeah, a couple of cars just running wide. That was a number 22 Richard Mason driven McLaren, I think, that just ran wide coming out of Roberts. Where is Lucky Kira? There he goes, he's taken the checkered flag in second position. Third place, Graham Tilley at the wheel of the Nissan finishes in third place. Fourth place will be the Group GTO winner, which is the orange Porsche. Here it comes now. Richard Chamberlain finishes in fourth place to claim top honours in Group GTO. Fifth place should go the way of the number 61 Lamborghini. We didn't see huge amounts of it, which meant that it's probably a quiet race for John Dillon. Here he comes now over the start-finish line to finish in fifth position. And sixth place will go the way of the Group GTC winning car, which is Warren Gilbert for Top Cats Racing. Here it comes now with its lights ablaze, the silver and light green Lamborghini that completed the top six, and I think that is now pretty much everybody to take the checkered flag once Andy Roby and Carl Cavers come over. I think that is everybody through to take the checkered flag. So that is our first sprint race of the day, a busy first sprint race of the day. Congratulations to Sam Neary on the win, and congratulations to everybody in what were deteriorating conditions in the end. I think the tarmac has stayed dry, but I suppose it's more psychological, the fact that you're racing in the sunshine at the same time as the snow starts to fall, which is a very bizarre set of circumstances. We've had pretty much every season in a single day here. So Sam Neary heads down the pit lane. We might be able to just guide you through the results before, hopefully, we might be able to pick up with maybe a few words with at least one or two of our group winners, who hopefully will be down there with Michelle shortly. So cars heading in towards the pit lane, and they will, I think, just be pushed back into their garages, and then once the cars have been pushed back into the garages, of course the teams don't relax and rest now. They've got a further race to prepare the cars for, do all of that spanner check, change the tyres, check that everything is where it needs to be. It may well be that they opt to change a few setup tweaks on the cars if they're looking at the weather forecast to see what's going to happen later on. If there's a possibility of rain, they will no doubt soften up the suspension and the anti-roll bars, and maybe even the bump and the rebound and everything on the cars, just to get them in the sweet spot, ready for what could potentially be, looking at the weather forecast, a slightly wetter race later on. Fingers crossed not, but who knows with the bizarre weather we've had around Donington Park over the course of today, more so than yesterday. Yesterday was fairly consistent. It was cold and blustery all day, but it was overcast with sunny spells. Today, yeah, we haven't had rain, but we've had a little bit of hail, we've had sleet, we've had snow, we've certainly had sunshine, and all through all of that, regardless of what the sun and the clouds have been doing, it's been bitterly cold. Just to give you an idea, if you're watching at home, it's about 4 degrees out there at the moment. That's all. That's the air temperature as things stand at the moment, and we are scheduled to have, well, for the rest of the afternoon, it's saying rain according to my watch until we get to 7 o'clock, and then it's showing snow from 7 o'clock until midnight here in the Nottinghamshire, Leicestershire, Derbyshire border. So cars just being pushed back into the pit lane. You can see how busy it is, can't you? It's a real logistical exercise to get all of the cars in pit lane at the same time, and that's why come the pit stop race later on, we will have staggered pit windows for different groups of cars. It's not a single pit window where they all come in. Because of the numbers of cars, the regulations this year allow 2 separate pit stop windows depending on what group your car is in. That dictates as to when the pit stop window is in the pit stop race, but that's all to worry about, and we'll tell you all about that a little bit later on. So cars almost clear. Results will be on their way, ladies and gentlemen. I'm sure we will get there. Maybe just a small technical issue that is just preventing the results coming up, but rest assured the team will be working on that to make sure that we can bring you some results. So let's guide you then through the results. I think we're there and ready to go for the results for the sprint race, and the win goes the way of Team ABBA and Sam Neary at the wheel of the Mercedes. Second was Lucky Kira for Simon Green Motorsport in the Lamborghini, and third place was the Nissan in the hands of Graham Tilley. Fourth place was CTR Developments, that's Richard Chamberlain the Porsche, he was the Group GTO winner, and fifth place it was the Scott Sport Lamborghini, with Top Cats Racing coming home in sixth place, the winners of Group GTC. Stanbridge Motorsport was seventh. Team Hard Racing finished in 8th position. That's going to be the Group GTB winner, which is Richard Marsh, and it was SB Engineering and Valuga Motorsports that completed the top 10. Outside of the top 10, in 11th place, that is the winner of Group GTA, which is going to be Simon Orange at the wheel of the orange-powered Ginetta, just ahead of Scott Sport, Craig Wilkins, who finished in 12th place, and the Group GTH winner, which is Feathers Motorsport, and James Guest finished in 13th place. Another one of the orange racing-powered cars finished in 14th place. That will be Josh Jackson. 15th place was Make It Happen Racing, which I think probably means that they finished third in their group, as it was in the end. Raw Motorsport was 16th after their visit to the pit stops, ahead of Stanbridge Motorsport, Paddock Motorsport, Enduro Motorsport, and Gemini Motorsport, who finished in 20th position. That would have been Andy Roby. 21st place has gone the way of the Porsche that finished in 21st place. That would be Carl Cavers that finished in 21st position at the wheel of his Porsche. 22nd place would have been Stuart and Lewis Proctor, who called into the pit lane a lap early, maybe as the conditions deteriorated. That's why the Balfe Motorsport car is down there in 23rd position. And then from there on onwards, other cars that sort of had a few issues. JMH Automotive, another car that called into the pit lane early. John Seal, ahead of Century Motorsport. Signature RV, the former champions, 25th quickest. Balfe Motorsport, 26th. The Greystone cars, 27th, 29th and 30th, sandwiched by Chris Murphy and the Whitebridge Motorsport in the middle, who finished in 28th position. Outside of the top 30, we are now getting into cars that had issues over the course of the race, in particular for the likes of the car that finished in 34th position, Orange Racing, powered by JMH. We saw the problems for the WPI Lamborghini, and also the problems that befell both the 24/7 Porsche and the deranged Motorsport Aston Martin, which retired very early on. So all of those cars having problems, hopefully all fixable, ready for later on this afternoon and the pit stop race. So that is it for the sprint race. Hopefully, though, Michelle might be able to catch up with one or two drivers down there in the pit lane. So I can see Michelle Livings is outside of some of the garages, and hopefully, Michelle, you found somebody to chat to.
Do you know what, Mark? No, I haven't, because everyone seems to have disappeared.
Oh,
it
dear.
takes such a long time to go through all the winners with such a massive grid. Of course, by the time you get down here, everyone sort of disappeared, especially because the snow started to come down, of course, as the cars came into the pit lane. What weird weather indeed. So yeah, it's all looking a little bit quiet, I've got to be honest. And the other thing that I have to say is I was going to go down and have a chat to Sam Neary. Of course, he had a great win with that race, matching his dad yesterday. But the problem we do have, a slight technical one, is if I go too far down the pit lane, I lose all connection, so I wouldn't be able to chat to you anyway. So I'm kind of a little bit stuck with being able to go too far, but it was a fantastic race, and of course we're going to have a lot more for you, because we do have that endurance, that pit stop race coming up quite a bit later. In actual fact, we're due to go out at 5:30. We'll probably start our live coverage earlier than that, so make sure you keep abreast of everything. Easiest thing to do is to go onto the social media, Instagram, all the information's on the stories mainly, so check the stories out. And then we'll be back on Facebook. You can watch us on YouTube as well. And that will be the longer 50-minute pit stop race. That's when the pro drivers will come out as well. All being well with the weather, of course, because anything could happen. As Mark, you said, we're having all seasons in one day. I don't think we've had thunder and lightning just yet, but the wind's now picking up. I can hear it. And the snow's gone, but there's lots of clouds still around, and it is certainly, in terms of temperature, getting very, very chilly all of a sudden. So, Mark, I'm going to hand over to you, but I will see everyone back here, as I say, just before 5:30.
Thanks, Michelle. Yeah, so shame we didn't get to chat to the drivers. Maybe next time for the pit stop race, we'll, in the results, just pick out the group winners, maybe the top 10, and then just the group winners, and it will give Michelle a little more time to chat to some of the winners. But as Michelle suggested, that's it for the moment. The pit stop race is scheduled to get underway at 5:30, so the stream may well start about 5:20. And as for those social medias, yeah, just type in GT Cup onto Facebook or YouTube, and all of the social medias you will find from there. So from the whole Butte Motorsport and GT Cup Championship team here at Donington Park, thanks for joining us for the sprint race, but don't go anywhere. We'll be back later on today with the pit stop race. Goodbye.